Rather than a regular chapel talk this morning, we are going to share a hard truth about the world in just the small corner of the world. Just in the state of Connecticut, a small state, just in the state of Connecticut in the last year, more than 30 women and children were killed by men, their partners, husbands, boyfriends, just in the state of Connecticut. As a man, as a father of sons and a teacher of sons, of boys, this is not a woman's problem. This is our problem. We need to be aware of this, and we need to be the men who change it. What we're going to do now is simply read some stark facts and the names of people who lost their lives in this ugly reality just in the last year in this little state, in this little part of the world.
Edward Landry, Jr., 44 years old, of Newington, Connecticut, shot and killed by ex-girlfriend.
Francis Piscatelli, 41, of Hamden, Connecticut, stabbed to death by a live-in boyfriend.
Sharon DeLefson, 55 years old, of Southington, Connecticut, was shot to death by her husband in a murder-suicide.
Chris Ann Polloy, 28, Manchester, shot to death by live-in boyfriend.
Marion Fiordilisi, 86, of Stamford, Connecticut, shot to death by her son.
Elizabeth Goff, 32 at the time of her death in 1984, of Newton, Connecticut, killed by blunt force trauma to the head at the hands of her husband, was arrested for her murder in 2012.
Linda Grapevine, 59, of Littlebury, Connecticut, stabbed to death by her boyfriend.
Anastasia Keys, 23, of Manchester, Connecticut, shot and killed by her boyfriend.
Christine Jeffries, 46 years old, of Bridgeport, Connecticut, killed by blunt force trauma to the head by her live-in boyfriend.
Michelle Barrows, 32 years old, of Meriden, Connecticut, was shot and killed by her boyfriend in a murder-suicide.
Susan Mozzarella, 53, of Wallingford, Connecticut, strangled to death at the hands of her live-in boyfriend.
Athena Angeles, 3 years old, of Willimantic, Connecticut, died of physical force at the hands of her mother's live-in boyfriend.
Jocelyn Rodriguez, 29, of New Haven, Connecticut, stabbed to death by her estranged husband.
Allison Archer Williams of Hartford, Connecticut, and her friend Dean Samuels were shot and killed by her estranged husband.
Joseph Golick, 90, of New Britain, Connecticut, stabbed to death by his son.
Meredith Negron, 39, of North Branford, Connecticut, shot to death by husband in a murder-suicide.
Billy D. Fajou Owen, 52, of New Canaan, Connecticut, was shot to death by her husband in a murder-suicide.
Beth Day, 24, of Cinderberg, Connecticut, was shot to death by her live-in boyfriend in a murder-suicide. She was planning to leave and return home to her parents with their 18-month-old son, who was unharmed in the home.
Catherine Fox, 51, of Milford, Connecticut, strangled to death by her husband in a murder-suicide.
Natalie Ramirez, 23, of Danbury, Connecticut, stabbed to death while planning to leave her live-in boyfriend. Their 4-year-old child witnessed the murder of his mother.
Suzette Morgan, 39, of Waterbury, was shot and killed by her father in a murder-suicide.
Linda Sannon of New London, Connecticut, was age 25 when her fiancé stabbed her to death.
Cheryl Thomas, 50, of Bridgeport, Connecticut, beaten and stabbed to death by her boyfriend.
Haley Smith, 3 months old, of Norwalk, Connecticut, died to blunt head trauma at the hands of her father. survivor of domestic violence, Josie Dixon, has written a book of poetry related to domestic violence. And although, I'm a member of the Board of Women's Support Services, and although these are grim facts that we listen to today, the fact that we are having this service gives hope to those who are still victims of domestic violence, and they know through organizations like Women's Support Services that there is help for them. I want to share a poem by Josie Dixon. Read the articles in the paper, check the numbers on the internet, gather up statistics as you go, and find yourself looking blindly at what is in front of you. I walked right past you as you read your numbers. I served your lunch as you frowned at life. I handed you your child as you picked him up from daycare. I greeted your stressed out glare as you left my register. You watched me pushing a stroller while you waited impatiently. I called your name announcing your visit. I made your copies as you asked me to do. Read the articles in the paper. Check the numbers on the internet. Gather up statistics as you go, and find yourself looking blindly right through me. I am not a statistic. I am not on the front page. My name is not on the internet. No, I am not a statistic. I am not a statistic. I am voiceless, soulless, and scared. I cry for you each night in anger, in pain, and shame. I am not a statistic. I stand before you with my heart in my hand and ask that once, this once, you don't look away, but instead you reach out your hand as I surrender my heart, my voice, my life, and my soul. No, I am not a statistic. Instead, I stand before you, waiting, just waiting to be heard. As these words pour out of me today, statistics are the voices that were heard, as their names were called out by a priest, a pastor, or a policeman. No, I am not a statistic.